Welcome to the Half Priced Concessions Podcast. I'm your co-host, Tyler Williams, and on this episode today, this podcast is getting back to what it was supposed to be. Good old boy conversations about the greatest sport of all, motorsports, racing, auto racing, whatever name you want to call it by. There is none better. Truth be told, these last couple of months, I tried to do the weekly update thing, trying to put out weekly content because it's hard to come up with guests. It's hard to find time in between, working a full-time job, being a husband, race announcing, to find people to talk to that are within a reasonable driving distance that doesn't sacrifice too much of my time with my family. Charlie Agnew, thankfully, came through with a message, was willing to share some stories, and I'm glad he was. We're putting away the weekly update stuff. We'll still post on the Facebook page about what classes are racing what, but we're done making those into episodes. It was a good 2-month try, and we gave it a shot, but it's not who we are. We're about local, grassroots people, fans, drivers, crew chiefs, announcers, whoever it is, promoters, just sitting down talking about racing. That's all this podcast is. It's all it ever should be. So, without further ado, on the other side of these breaks, we're going to get back to what we do best. And thank you to Charlie Agnew for sitting down for this episode of the Half Priced Concessions Podcast as we just shoot the bull about everything from ACE Speedway racing to kart racing to dirt track racing to East Alabama Motor Speedway. All kinds of cool stuff. You'll definitely find something you probably like in this conversation. On the other side of this break, Charlie Agnew joins us on the Half Price Concessions Podcast.
Planning on doing some digging in your yard? Your simple backyard project could quickly turn dangerous. Buried underground cables and lines are just inches below the surface, so don't forget to make one very important call to 811. Calling 811 is the first step in having your buried utilities marked so you know where it is safe to dig. 811 is free, it's fast, and it's the law. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
The Half Price Concessions Podcast cannot say thank you enough to Roger Johnson and the awesome folks at the Performance Center Racing Warehouse for all their support of our podcast and of local racing. If you are an asphalt racer and you need your front or rear clip fixed, Performance Center has some of the quickest turnarounds in the country. In the market for a new race car, the PRW chassis is a proven winner. You need something for your asphalt late model stock race car, you need to get in touch with Roger Johnson and Performance Center Racing Warehouse today. Make sure you check out their website. It's performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com. You can also like them on Facebook at Performance Center Racing Warehouse and call them today at 704-838-1400.
Hey podcast listeners, I'm Keith Montgomery of Montgomery Performance Consulting, and I want to help speed up your racing program. Whether you're racing dirt, asphalt, or road course, put my years of experience to work for you. Our pull-down services will help find where you're giving up speed so you can unload faster and run up front. We also offer trackside consulting and data testing to help you find speed and balance. And with our central location in Burlington, North Carolina, you can come to us for discounted rates on pull-down sessions. Call me today at 336-382-1835. Like us on Facebook at Montgomery Performance Consulting, and let us help your racing program today.
In today's world, you need every advantage you can get when it comes to your personal business or your race car. Accelerated Graphics can help you make the best first impression possible by looking sharp. Whether it's embroidery on hats, t-shirts, or polos, trophies, decals, wraps for your race car, wraps for your commercial car, Accelerated Graphics and Jason Turner can help make that possible and help give you a good, clean, professional look that not only attracts new customers, but attracts everybody and their mother to want to see how sharp your vehicles look. Call Accelerated Graphics today at 336-266-5653. Visit worth2tenths.com or find Accelerated Graphics on Facebook and get a hold of Jason Turner today. Here on the Half Price Concessions Podcast and just trading racing stories with anybody and everybody that has one, no matter how famous or not famous they are. And I don't think this guy wants to be famous. Mr. Charlie Agnew joins me, but I will say, Charlie, from our mutual friends, the Paynes, I have heard quite a few stories about some of your comings and goings. But first and foremost, man, it's just good to see you. I feel like we haven't been to a race together in a while. Our schedules must just not be lined up.
Yeah, Tyler, it is good to see you, man. I know we've our schedules are kind of flipping and flopping, and then the whole COVID thing and slowed everything down for a while. But now I think we're back to somewhat normal, and we'll get together, man. We got to go somewhere soon and hang out.
I will give you credit. You're the reason I got to go see at least one night of dirt racing at Bristol, because you were supposed to go, and the forecast looked like rain, and it did end up raining on Saturday, and you got to preach on Sundays. You don't have the option of missing church like some others in the congregation do.
Yeah, it wouldn't look too good if 11 o'clock on Sunday morning coming the preacher wasn't there. So I was really scared to get stuck and rained out up there and driving all the way up and all that. But I'm glad you got to go and enjoy it, and it was a good show. And I hate I missed it, but, sometimes there's a reason, bigger picture stuff that we don't know about. But.
Hey, you never know, man. Well, tell us a little bit about you, because I've known you for a little bit just through the Paynes as just a racing fan per se, but then the more I get to know you, the more I realize how sinful you are with all this Alabama stuff. No, I'm just kidding. But tell us a little bit about you. How old are you? Where you come from? Just some of the basics.
Well, I will be 50 years old next March. I'm originally from here, born right here in Alamance County, and when I was about 3 years old, my dad picked us up and moved us down to Columbus, Georgia, which is right on the Georgia-Alabama line. I grew up on the Chattahoochee River, and just grew up there playing stick and ball sports and all this and that. And I guess with racing, my first racing memories, believe it or not, are listening to cup races on the radio with my dad. He'd be out on Sundays washing his truck or putting spark plugs in or doing brakes or something, and we'd have the race on. And so those announcers back then did such a good job of painting a picture with words and telling us. It sounded so exciting. It was probably like it is today, like they were within 10 car lengths of somebody, but yet they was on his back bumper.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of started the interest there, but never really. We weren't going. My dad was a huge race fan all his life, but we weren't really going then. And as far as racing goes, we kind of met somebody that had a dirt track car and went out and started kind of going, and just it kind of went from there. I mean, there's a ton of stories about how we really got deep into it, but I don't know how deep you want to go in that rabbit hole, but that's
well, we'll spin it out eventually. But I find it interesting about the listening to it on the radio, because I feel like that's where a lot of people because not everybody grew up in a place that was near a cup track or where it was feasible to go to a cup track. But at that time, NASCAR radio, and still somewhat today, it just has such a long reach, and all these country stations and whatnot play it, and it's easy to get a hold of. Honestly, it's a lot easier to get a hold of that than it is. I ain't never heard no dirt races on radio, or Indy cars got a little bit here and there, but NASCAR radio just seemed like it got a lot of people. Yeah,
for sure. And it was, like I said, just back then it wasn't on TV. I mean, it was just it wasn't on television, so you couldn't go watch it. And we would venture up, go to Atlanta Motor Speedway a time or two. My dad would get some free tickets every once in a while from some salespeople at work, and we'd slide up there. And I was the first time I ever went to Atlanta, a crew member got killed there that day, and that was my first exposure to big time stock car racing. And
wow.
It didn't really traumatize me. I think I was really too small to really grasp what had happened, but we kind of had that exposure. The radio, man, it just back then, and still to this day, sometimes on certain things, I would just as soon listen to the radio broadcast as the what's on the television.
So tell me about that first dirt track experience, because I know that's your wheelhouse right there.
Yeah, man, that's what I love, and like I said, we met a guy named Andy Jones who worked at a grocery store next to our house and found out he had a dirt car. They were trying to get it ready, and so we kind of went out there and looked around his shop a little bit and didn't really help him out. We just kind of hung out, and then we started going to the races over East Alabama Motor Speedway in Phoenix City, Alabama, the world famous playground of power. It's a really nice place, and we started going there every week, every Saturday. It became just what we did, and my parents were usually either the first people or second people there. We'd get there
that early. We
would get there before they were even taking money at the ticket window. They would come out and take our money later.
Wow.
My dad said he had to be there to show them, to make sure they watered the track correctly. So he was just that anxious to get there every Saturday, and so we were doing that, and really, you'll love this one. We got really deep into this deal when we were sitting there one Saturday, and some friends had come with us, and our friend's daughter finds this funny-looking cigarette on the ground, and she says, "Hey, look, what's this weird cigarette?" And this guy sitting behind us, who was a driver, because back then the drivers they'd run their race and they'd come up in the stands and watch the rest of them. And so, and he still had his driving suit tied around his waist, he's a big guy. And he says, "Let me see that." And he takes hold of it, and he says, "Well, yeah, this is marijuana." And he said, "I'll get rid of it." So we're like, "Oh yeah, he's going to get rid of it, right?" But then we get to talking to him. He's a police officer. So the guy's name was Al Baker. Him and my dad, then I don't know, something happened that night, and I think the very next day we were at his house. And we started hanging around him and helping him with his dirt cars, and kind of, then it was every Saturday, a lot of Fridays, driving over there during the week and working on them, and just, that really, really got me excited about racing, and especially dirt racing. And that was what really got me going. And, I'd sit there and racing be happening, and I'd telling my dad this, that, and we'd go driving home, and my dad said, "If you would concentrate on your schoolwork half as much as you worry about this racing, you'd be okay." And I was like, "Well, that ain't gonna happen."
and that was the time, those cars you were going to see, they're not, I think people that come into dirt racing now, I'm glad they're here, but I think they're spoiled, because you see a dirt late model today, and it's a pretty daggum modern piece of machinery. It's got a ton of bells and whistles and engineering on it. And you look back at those cars that were running when you were a kid, even 80s, 90s, up till probably about 98 or 99. It was just a much simpler machine.
Oh yeah. I remember. The first car that Andy and them had was a Dodge. It was a Dodge Challenger. It was just a street stock car, Dodge Challenger. Wasn't nothing special. Just more or less a street car with a roll cage in it, and a little motor work done. And Al, he ran in when we met him, he was running in the Thunder class, which was basically a stock chassis car, with maybe it might have had you could put a Camaro clip on it, but it wasn't a real purpose-built race car, so to speak.
Yeah. And
so, I can remember, I look at these cars now, walk around in the pits or something at a late model race, and I'm like, man, we had they got nice brake bias adjusters, and we had a rod that come through the firewall that you cranked and had left and right on top, so we know which way Al would know which way to turn it. We didn't have, and of course we didn't have any money either, so we were just getting by. But it's amazing in the technology, and I tell people all the time that are new to, that kind of go and see a dirt race, a late model race. You need to go and you need to walk in the pits. Yeah. And you need to really look at these cars, because seeing them from the stands, you cannot appreciate the technology that is in these things. It is amazing. And the smart people that are working on these cars. And it's always been that way, Tyler. The guy might have had on overalls and no shoes and chewing tobacco and spitting it down his chest. But some of the things they did with cars in the 60s and 70s are amazing. Gary Ballou, if you read his book, some of the things he talks about doing back then, how would you even think of? Yeah, I don't talk about running drugs, but I'm talking about stuff he did with cars.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And that's one of the things I love about racing is that ingenuity, and I think some of the bigger series and programs tend to limit that ingenuity probably more than I'd like to see. But I understand they're trying to keep costs down. I get it, but you can keep costs down and let people think.
I'll tell you what, the only things I know about East Alabama is National 100, and every time I watch it on pay-per-view, it's about 20. It seems like there's 20 different classes of late models out there. Was it like that back then when you were a kid, where you were going to be there for quite a while if you showed up to watch?
National 100 and Alabama State Championship weekends. It's worse now. Back then, they would run all the features on Sunday. You pretty much do everything else, and usually back then, you'd be home before dark. Okay. I'll tell you a funny story about that. We were there, and we had, on the way home, we decided to stop at the grocery store to pick up some things or whatever, and we go in the grocery store, and we had red dirt all over us. It's a day race down there, dusty. That lady back at the grocery store, she said, "What in the world happened to y'all?" But it's a big deal. I tell you, if you're a dirt racing fan, you owe it to yourself to go check it out one time. It is really a long weekend, but it is a fun weekend. It's a lot. You get your money's worth in racing. If you love racing, it's great. If you're just a casual race fan, I'd stay away. It's probably not for you. You need to be diehard. Yeah. You need to be one of those people. But we were there, and
did you see any real big names come through there?
Oh, everybody came through. I mean, I remember Bloomquist when he had short hair, coming through. I remember when he was fresh, Jeff Purvis, Blackjack Boggs, Freddie Smith, everybody who was somebody in dirt late model racing came through there at one point or another back then. And it was, we were there. I'll tell you a funny story. You'll probably like this one. It's not funny to me, but you'll like it. You'll think it's funny.
All right.
When I turned 16 years old, my 16th birthday, never forget it, we went to Atlanta Motor Speedway. The ARCA race was it was a Saturday. They run the ARCA race on Saturday. We knew some people that were going to be in the ARCA race that we'd met through the dirt track. Matter of fact, Billy Thomas, who ran East Alabama, was running the ARCA race, and a couple other people. Al Baker, the guy that drove the car that Dad helped with a lot, was a gas man on another ARCA team. So he was going to dump gas that day, and then we were going to drive back and go race that evening.
Okay.
So we go to Atlanta, we watch the ARCA race, we drive back that night, got there, and Al wins the heat race by half a lap. I mean, he's on cruise control. Start the feature, the first lap, this guy wrecks him, runs him in the wall, tears the car all to pieces, and breaks his shoulder. Totaled the car. 8 weeks later, we fix another car. Takes us 8 weeks for him to heal, build another car, get it ready. We go back out. The same guy on the first lap of the race knocks him off. Now, East Alabama, if you've never been there, has no wall on 3/4 of the track.
Yeah, it's just the front stretch between the drivers and the fans.
Exactly. The same guy hits him, knocks him off the back of the track, rolls the car, totals that race car.
Jeez.
So I'm the first person, I run across the racetrack, and I look down, and I can see Al is moving, and he's getting out of the car. I'm like, okay, he's fine. So I go find the other guy.
Yeah.
And they got him stopped. They got everybody stopped on the racetrack. So I run, and I jump in the back of his car.
Oh.
Dirt car's open in the back and it's decked.
Yeah.
So I jump in the back of his car, and I'm laying on the deck with my arms around him, choking him from behind. And the people are trying to pull me off of him are doing nothing but helping me choke him.
Yeah, they're just making your grip stronger.
And so they finally got me off of him, and the sheriff there was kind of a buddy of ours. He said, I could take you to jail. I said, you wouldn't do that. He said, no, I wouldn't. I'd rather lock him up. But
yeah, I'm about to say.
He totaled 2 race cars for us in 8 weeks, and and broke the other shoulder this time.
Oh.
So, needless to say, wasn't a huge fan, but looking back on it, I'm like, man, it's crazy. But we did that for a good while, helped him a lot, and got me my first chance to drive a car, which was very interesting.
I didn't know you ever drove. Tell me about that.
I drove. we had Al Baker. He was a super guy, and he had loaned a guy. He had another trailer. He had loaned a guy his other trailer to pull his race car. Well, the guy never brought the trailer back.
No, he
He showed up. He raced one night, and he never showed up again. So Al kept calling him, never got him back, never could get him to bring the trailer back. So we found out where it was, and we went and got the trailer. When we got the trailer, it still had his race car on it. And it was a 70 model Chevelle. So we brought it home. The guy called Al, said, "Hey man, did you get my race car?" He said, "No, I got my trailer." So your race car just happened to be on it.
Yeah.
And he said, and when we got the trailer, one of the fenders was knocked off of it, and the tongue was bent and had a flat tire. He said, I figure you owe me $300 or $400 to fix my trailer. And he said, "You give me my money, I'll give you your car back." And the guy said, "Just keep it."
Oh, okay.
So we had a race car,
All right.
and they fixed it up for me to drive. And I only got to drive it once. I was already on the delayed entry program to go in the Navy, so we went and we took it to Talladega Short Track.
The Hornet's Nest.
The Hornet's Nest. They didn't call it that back then. They just called it Talladega back then. But we took it up there, and we had the motor in the car wasn't any good, so we put a motor in it that come out of a modified or something. So it was a little bit cheated up. But it's what we had. We wasn't trying. We really weren't trying to cheat. We just didn't have anything else.
Okay.
And it had gear drives in it, Pete Jackson gear drives, so you could hear them. So I couldn't crank the car up unless there were 2 or 3 other cars around me running. So,
otherwise, it's going to be real obvious.
Yeah, they're going to know we cheating. I still have a video somewhere, and I'm driving that car down through the pits, and you can hear, I'm like, holy cow. I'm so
like a dang bulldozer.
all the tech man was worried about was I had to take my mirror out of the car. That's all he cared about.
Sounds like a modern day tech man today.
So, long story short, I got to drive it one time, and wouldn't stay, run that thing at a 3-speed in it and running in third gear. Well, in the race, it let off the gas, it pop out of third gear. So I have to jam it back into third gear. Okay. So then I'm trying to drive with one hand and hold it in third gear with the other hand. I've never driven a race car before, and it was terrible. I was all over the place. I was trying not to get killed at the same time. So we had a caution or something, and I'm going to have a restart. So restart in second. So I said, I'm just going to leave it in second and see what happens. Yeah. And, it tacking up. Wow, I don't know how high, because I didn't look. But I come by, and then the next time I come by where my dad was standing, he was waving his arms and jumping up and down and telling me to come in. So I pulled in. He said, "Get out of that thing before you blow that motor up." And that was it. That was the end of my first attempt at being a race car driver. Which it was a lot of fun, but it was scary, and I wasn't very good at it. But it was, I appreciate the opportunity.
Just wasn't. You realized pretty quick it just was not your thing.
No, I tried again. I had an extreme car run over at ACE for a couple, 2 or 3 parts of seasons, and we did some dirt racing with them, and with Buddy Payne and David Bledsoe and some of them. We'd go up to Virginia and have some fun up there, Oak Level and different places. But I never have, I did some kart racing, but I just never have been able to really get the driving part of it, Tyler. I don't know, and I believe that not everybody can do it. I think there are certain people, you can get better at it, but I think there are certain people that just have something that's God-given that gives them some of those abilities. And obviously that he didn't give me that. I just, as much as I'd want to be one, I don't think I am one. I don't think I could be one.
I agree with that. I've only driven an extreme car twice at ACE, and it did 2 things probably like it did for you. Number one, it gave me a greater respect, because I didn't really respect the speed watching until I got out there. And then number 2, it was a further reminder, you just stay in the stands. It's okay to just be a fan.
Yeah, it's like I said, for me, I've kind of always wanted to do it, and I've had some opportunities to piddle with it, and been fun, but I'm so competitive that if I can't really be good at something, then it'll be a problem for me, And I was fortunate enough in my life to have helped some people in do in some racing things and had some success on that end. So that's always, that was fun. And I do enjoy working on them, and I do enjoy, figuring out what makes them go and what makes them turn left and what gets them straight coming off the corner. And, that's fun to me. Trying to find the little nuances and the little gray areas in the rule book and things like that are always fun and challenging. But I think I'm a much better crew member than I am a driver.
Yeah, that's fair. Did you have any favorites when you were growing up down there, or did you just like seeing any kind of racing, no matter who was out there?
Oh, I would watch any kind of racing, period. But really, early on, of course, Al Baker, he's just a local guy, but he was my favorite because that's who we knew and that's who we were helping. And there's a lot of guys that come through. I loved Jeff Purvis when he'd come around in his dirt late model. To me, he was the first person to me to stand out, to have a professional looking dirt late model operation, which what I really despise now. He had to toter home and a big trailer, and James Finch was pumping a bunch of money into it and all that. And Jeff was a heck of a driver. I mean, he was the first person to ever see blow a motor up on a car and then pull another car out and go race. And he was one of my favorites. Red Farmer, to this day,
still racing,
still just a legend. I tell you something cool about Red. Having met him several times because he would race at Talladega Short Track, and we'd go up there and run some. And he one year it would have been in the late '80s, on the weekend of the big Cup race, one of the Cup races at Talladega, they had a match race. Dale Earnhardt came over, and he drove a guy named James Klein's car, and it was just him and Red Farmer. Yeah. And they ran 3 10-lap races. Best 2 out of 3 was the winner. Well, they split the first 2. They come out of turn 4 to the white flag in the last race, and Earnhardt was leading, and Red Farmer dumped him and went on around and won the race. And I mean, that was, to me, that was poetic justice, I guess. And
for all the people that Earnhardt dumps on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, he, and old Red was just laughing his tail off. He just a guy that just, for me, he's never been super successful, on the largest stages, but he's done exactly what he wanted to do all his life. And to me, that's amazing.
He reminds me of an older version of Kenny Schrader.
Yeah.
If you just went by the big NASCAR stuff, you'd probably think he was just an also ran. But if you actually look at what he does race, you'd be like, oh, this dude's a hero.
Yep.
I mean, just for his commitment, how long he's still doing
it.
And
if you look back in history, in NASCAR history, and really study it, now he was very successful in sportsman cars and things like that. He won a bunch of races, and then he crew chiefed Davey Allison's Busch stuff, and super guy. I mean, just having met him, and just one of my heroes, really, and in life. And I tell you this one about you'll love this one, man. This is another little track down in Alabama. See, going down there, it was so fun because you could race a lot, Fridays and Saturdays, and there was a lot of racing you could do. And back then, you could take the same car, run it Friday night, go home. You might change 1 or 2 things and go race on Saturday.
Yeah,
it wasn't as tracks didn't seem to be at each other's throats so much. There was a little track. And it's still running today, I think, called Penton Raceway. And back then, it had been closed for a while, and they were reopening it. So we go up there, and the first time we go up there, the guy running the place, he said, we only got 2 rules: no fighting and no protesting. I said, this place is right up my alley.
I'm about to say, keep it simple.
I said, well, where's the scales at? He said, well, if there's any question about weight, we'll drive down to the lumber yard down the road and weigh you. So that the next time we went up there, we brought a modified up there with a late model motor in it. And,
of course.
And won the heat race, about lapped the field in the heat race. And then Guy come over after the heat race. He said, "What in the world kind of motor y'all got in this thing?" We said, "Oh, it's just old backyard 350. That's all. We just stowed it together." And would have killed him in the feature, but broke an axle. And the guy told us he would appreciate it if we didn't bring that car back up there anymore. So, those are the kind of fun things we used to get to do back then. And then of course I went in the Navy and did that for a while. And when I was in the Navy, my parents moved back to North Carolina, trying to hide from me, I guess. But I found them and moved up here when I got out, and kind of did some little kart racing and stuff like that started out at that old Red Rock racetrack out off 119. And
I've heard stories about Red Rock.
Man, that place was fun, man. I tell you, that was a fun little racetrack. Had a lot of fun. It was fun then because you could show up at about 5 o'clock on Saturday evening, and about 11 o'clock you were headed home. Now you go to the go-kart track, you got to get there about 5 o'clock in the morning, and about 5 o'clock the next morning you get to go home. And I'm too old for that. But
and the carts got more. They're funky looking now. I see those pictures of those ones that y'all used to run, and it was the open wheels, and you could run up on people. All you had was a number tag on the back or whatever. Now they look like a race car. They got the whole body in the front thing. It's just a different time. Yeah,
that's how I started. Just had number plates, and your feet were kind of exposed, and
everything was exposed.
And then I mean, when I was still doing it, that transition was taking place, and it's like every type of racing though. It cycles through this thing to where they try to do something to make it more affordable and attract people, and they do for a little bit, but then the racers mess it up.
Yeah.
Karts did the clone motor thing. You could go get a motor for a couple $100 and you could race it, and now guess what? You can't do that anymore. We did that for a while, and about, 93 or so, 94, I met Keith Perry, running a super stock car over at ACE, and
I remember Keith Perry.
Started helping him, and man, I learned so much about race cars, and especially asphalt race cars. And
what year was that?
Probably around 93 or 94 when I met him.
So at that, I'm going to put this in perspective for you. So at about that time,
you were in third grade.
No, 93 I was 5. But what I'm getting at is, so you're over there helping Keith Perry on a super stock. My uncle owned a piece of Richard Bailey's modified.
Okay.
That ran over there, number 31.
Yep.
So we were going over there on Fridays, and I was pulling for Richard Bailey in the modified, super stock. I was pulling for Timmy Hazlett, and late model I was diehard Robert Turner fan. But I remember seeing Keith Perry over there.
Yep.
I probably didn't see you because y'all probably pitted on the backstretch. I probably would have never actually seen you in the pits.
Yeah, we would normally have to pit wherever we could find a spot because we were always struggling to get there on Friday.
Because practice was at 6 o'clock, so
practice was at 6, and we all worked regular jobs. Keith and his dad AM. Or when I first met him, Keith was in college.
Yeah,
he was still going to school, and AM, his dad, he run a grading company, and so we were always. I tell you, in 95, I think it was, we won 5 out of the last 7 over there in that class. And one of the ones we won, we got there so late, the super stocks were on the backstretch lined up.
Oh, man.
And we unloaded on the hill going in the back gate.
Yeah.
Was it Jerry, the guy you used to work at the back gate?
Yeah,
Jerry,
yeah.
I can't remember his last name now, saved my life.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mr. Jerry, super guy, passed away now, but good guy. He opened the gate. We unloaded the car off the trailer on that hill. Keith drove right onto the racetrack, started in the back, and won the race, and then crossed the scales, did his interview, and drove right back off and right back on the trailer. And that was one of the most fun nights I ever had at ACE Speedway.
That's wild, man.
Because then we were like, do we even have to buy a pit pass?
Yeah, I was about to say, like, we just got it here for cheap. We need to do this more often.
But we had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot, because we didn't have much money. Keith didn't have a lot of money, and we would just make the best of everything we had, and a lot of things that other people would throw away, we would use.
Yeah.
And that was we'd take it and use it, and then we'd outrun some of them with the stuff they were throwing away, and I took a lot of satisfaction out of that.
And that was also You had 20-something late models at ACE. You had your Barry Begley's, your Richard Landreths. You had the Kings and the Modifieds. Yep. You had, I mean, I remember as a kid, the pits seemed like they were always slammed to days. And almost everybody was on an open trailer. There weren't a lot of closed trailers at that time.
It was full field and really good racing. I mean, ACE has always been a track that's hard to pass.
Yeah.
You know, it's a tough racetrack. But it was back then, you know, man, Jay Fogan was still coming around some. Todd Massey was running, Donnie Apple. And in the super stock class, you had Keith and you had Timmy Hazlett was there, and Mark Rumley he'd run that class for a little bit there. I think he was driving Sarge Talley back then.
Oh, Sarge Talley.
And you know, some of those people that come through, we just kind of missed Colin Engel. He'd been through and kind of moved up, and I mean, it was just good hard racing. You know, but at the same time, there were people that you'd help them. I mean, I'll never forget Ray Kimry was running in that class with us, and Ray was a super nice guy. He never had a whole lot of help, and I don't even remember something had broke on his car in practice, and we fixed it for him. Me and Keith fixed it for him and went out there in the race, and doggone if he didn't beat us. I think he won, we finished second, and I was like, man, I ain't gonna fix nothing for him no more. You know, but you know, that was fun, and we had a real good year in 95, and in 96, I think it was 90. I don't know. I'm so old, man, my years get mixed up. But 90, I know 90, I think the next year, first 4 weeks, we just tore the car all to pieces 4 weeks in a row.
Oh, geez.
And my wife was pregnant, Keith's wife was pregnant, and we just threw our hands up, man. We were done, and I think we were out of money, and we were out of patience, and it was time to take a break. And so Keith stepped back for a little bit, and I stayed away for a little while. And I mean, everybody that's been involved in racing or is involved in racing knows what it's like. It is like, I've never used drugs, so I can't say that for sure, but I feel like it's just like an addiction.
Yeah. And
I missed it so bad. So I said, man, I got to go to the racetrack. And when somehow, some way, I don't even remember how, I started helping Larry Cook. You remember Larry?
I do, the old C6.
Larry lived in a trailer park over here in Graham and Burlington area, and his race car sat on his trailer right outside, his car trailer right outside his trailer. Yeah. And poor fella, he didn't have a whole lot, didn't have a whole lot of help. And I said, you know what? I'm going to help this fella out. So give me something to do. I can be at the racetrack, and he needs it, and, we'll do what we can.
Yeah.
And, I think one of my things I'm most proud of, that as far as racing stuff, is that year Larry won 3 races.
Wow.
And I'd never seen him win before. I think he'd won way back in like the 80s or 70s or something.
Back when it was a dirt track.
But I'd never seen him win. And he won 3 races that year, and liked to won the championship.
Yeah.
We come down to the deal, him, Jerry Scott, and Brian King. I think it was really, Brian had not been running the whole year.
Yeah.
Brian kind of showed up here and there when he wanted to. I don't know if he was doing some of the tour stuff back then or what, but it was between him and Jerry. And actually, I think had a little bit of a lead on Jerry with a couple races to go. And I'll never forget, Larry was leading the race, and Jerry and Brian were coming. And I was on the radio. I was like, hey, they coming. Let them go.
Yeah.
And about the time I said, they coming,
they got there.
Jerry got him. And I didn't say he did it on purpose. It just, Jerry was running from Brian, and, it happened.
Yeah.
But tore the car up and finished last that night, and we had one more race and couldn't make it up. But but still, it was for Larry. That was a year I hadn't forgot it. I don't think I hadn't seen him in a long time, but that was fun. It was fun to see something. And it was so fun because I called in every favor to everybody I knew at ACE Speedway to borrow parts and pieces and clutches and everything. J-ball, everything. Because he didn't have any money, and I certainly didn't have any. So we were just,
hey man, you got something laying around or something?
I tell you, and that community of racers though, I mean, that's something that people that aren't in it don't understand. Yeah. I had people that say, yeah, we're not going to race. We're not going to race for a couple of weeks. Come take the one off my car and go run it.
That's probably the thing. I think I was talking to somebody about racing, and that was the hardest thing to explain. Was these two people of the big group? There's two people out on the track racing, and if one of them gets in a wreck, unless there's bad blood, they come down pit road, you'll probably have both sets of guys jump on the car trying to get him back out there. And then they go out there and they might bump into each other. They might knock each other the heck out. They might get in a fight later. And it's like, I think a normal, sane person looks at that and goes, like, what are you people doing? This is nothing. It's like, you don't understand unless you've been out there what it takes to stay out there.
Yeah, and that's the thing that, like I said, I grew up playing stick and ball sports, and they're tough. They're hard. They take a lot of dedication. They take a lot of work. But I don't think there's anything that I've ever been involved with that takes the time, the money, the work, the dedication that it takes to race. And race at a competitive level, on any level. I don't care if it's an extreme car or a super late model or whatever, a mini stock. It is tough. And the people that are good and the people that win are the people that spend the time to do it. Yeah. You know how it is. You've been around it. As soon as somebody becomes a little bit successful, well, they're cheating. They're cheating. They're cheating. They're cheating.
And they protest them.
Yeah, well, you look at the success Brian King had in the modified at ACE Speedway. But what people don't want to acknowledge is that every Wednesday, when the time they open that track to the time they close it, he would be there and he would practice and he would work. Yep. And he would be in his, if you went to look for him during the week, he'd be in his shop working on his car. He wasn't sitting on the trailer. He was working on it.
I still remember Brian being the only person, when I worked at ACE, he was the only person I ever seen bring a laser over there.
Yep.
Because he didn't want you might get a decent reading off the stopwatch. He wanted it precise. Yep. And he just, he had that dedication.
And in racing, I think that's just the way it is. But you can race for fun and not be that dedicated and have a great time.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to wrap my brain around why does somebody show up over here week after week after week and finish 8th? It took me forever to really wrap my brain around why would you do that? Because it would torture me.
Yeah.
Because I'm so competitive, it would drive me insane.
They're just over there to race.
They just race and having a good time. Yeah. And that's foreign to me in my brain, but the older I get, the more I can appreciate it.
As a dirt fan, I'd like to get your perspective on this. So you come from Alabama, and you got, like you said, East Alabama that's still, every dirt fan knows about East Alabama and all that stuff. Then, like you said, when you get out of the Navy, you're back in North Carolina where you came from, but now you're actually old enough where you said you left when you were a kid. So you go from all that, then you come back here, and you got the dirt scene in North Carolina. To me has always been, I mean it's there, but then you see like other places, and it just seems like it's so much more diehard, or maybe just here it's died down a little bit because like you still got your 311, your Friendship, your Fayetteville, and all that stuff, but it just seems like different corners of the country. It seemed like this area got so asphalt heavy in the 80s and 90s. It's almost like the dirt kind of took a step back a little bit.
I think here, to be honest with you, I think the boom in NASCAR and Cup racing hurt dirt racing in this area because we're so close to Charlotte and we're so close to the big Cup teams and the Busch team or Xfinity teams or whatever they want to call them this week. Yeah. And I think it hurt the dirt stuff a little bit because, one, the NASCAR people, at some point, they decided that they were going to cater to a different clientele. Oh, yeah. Bubba that worked at the junkyard wasn't the guy that they wanted to be at the race much anymore. I'll never forget going to Charlotte to the Speedway Club, and the man said I had to have a collared shirt on. I said, I ain't wearing a collared shirt to a racetrack for nothing, but, heck with you. I'll stay out here with all these guys. And, you know, and I think NASCAR shot themselves in the foot with it too, because you know their ADHD kicked in and they saw, you know, that squirrel went away, and you know what, us blue collar guys that built the sport, like my dad, you know, and probably your uncles and all those people, they loved racing the way it was. Yeah. And you know, the dirt scene here, there's probably a lot of problems. You know, track management has been a big issue at certain places around here. Yeah.
311.
Yeah, I'm not call out any names, but you know, the quality of racing, the track prep is for whatever reason seems to be a struggle around here, getting where you can race side by side, and you know, but I think there are pockets in North Carolina that there's some good dirt racing at times, but it's a struggle. And for us, we're kind of in this no man's land right here.
Yeah, in the Piedmont, it's like it's all asphalt tracks.
Yeah, and you know, people say, well, I don't want to get dirty, and I don't, you know, man, I tell you, I'll be honest with you, the asphalt stuff, most asphalt races, when the guy gets in the lead, if somebody don't knock him out of the way, he's going to stay there. Yeah. You know, it becomes very difficult. And some of it is that, you know, the guy's got good equipment. There's good equipment out there, and the guys are good drivers, and it's hard to pass a guy that's got good equipment. He's a good driver. On dirt, there's so many more variables. Yeah. Guy hits a rut, you know, whatever. And I wish it was different. You know, I tell people all the time, if I had a gazillion dollars, I'd build us a nice dirt track somewhere, and you know, I'd love to have a place like Virginia Motor Speedway, you know, within an hour drive of here.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Because you know, what a facility, you know.
But it's 3.5 hours away.
The place in Mansfield where we went to when they did the Dirt Million and went up there. Man, what a facility, you know, what a place. And, you know, but it's dirt racing to me, I don't think it'll ever die out. In certain areas of the country, it's king.
Oh, yeah, Illinois, where the Hill Tour runs, and
I mean,
Ohio and all those places.
Even down, I think now down in Georgia and Alabama, there are very few asphalt tracks now that are running. It's mostly gone back to dirt. And I hope that it'll come that way here. I think we need some leadership change at some places. Some ownership change would probably help. I haven't been to Fayetteville this year. I know they had some changes at the top there and did some rework on the track. So now you've been. I don't know if it made the racing any better, but
it's a lot different. I know that I think it's a little more conducive, but it's still. It had a little bit of a problem of being one groove, but I think it's gotten a little bit better. I think that eastern part of North Carolina fascinates me, because where the Piedmont and western North Carolina and so much of this area and dirt racing went hardcore on the crate stuff, 604s, and now they're going down to 602s. Eastern North Carolina, you still get steelheads.
Yeah,
I remember going to Madison, going to 311, and steelheads was the premier class. Yep. And you'd see those guys try to run with the Carolina Clash when they'd come to town. Back when the Carolina Clash would pull 36 cars for a 4,000 to win race, and you know all that steelhead stuff just went away. It's still alive in Eastern North Carolina. Daniel Tucker will still pull from Greensboro down to Eastern North Carolina on his steelhead.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's some of what we miss is, you know, that class that's fast and it's kind of open, and there's a lot of creativity, but it's, you know, don't cost you $80,000 for a motor. Yeah. You know, you know, your average guy can swing it with a decent sponsor here and there and can go race that class. And I tell you too, I've noticed that having spent a little bit more time down toward the eastern part of the state lately, I'm like, man, there's a lot more dirt cars down here than I realized. Oh yeah. And I'm like, hey,
that I-95 corridor's got some kicking down there pretty good.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've been doing a little RC car racing and go down to Wilson and I don't know if you say Lucama. I'll say Kinley.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, there's a lot of those guys that do it down there that also have big cars, and you know, so that's fun, man.
Go around and play and stuff.
Yep.
So, ever since I've known you, you've gotten to go do some pretty cool stuff. I know the Dirt Million, you got a real funny. Probably wasn't funny at the time, but it's kind of funny for me to hear its story. But going around all these different places. Give me some fun stories as a fan. Because I'll give you one just to kick off. I'll tell you what I mean. So the first time I ever went to With Raceway, now I went with Buddy Payne and Pops, and I don't think you were in the back seat. I think we had Stacker 2 was in the back seat.
Oh boy.
Ken, and we went up in the Geo. Not something with an actual motor in it. We went up there in a bicycle on 4 wheels.
Yes.
And we're going up the up the hill on the interstate, and Buddy had his foot to the floor, and that thing, I think we got all the way down to about 40 miles an hour because it just was not going to pedal. Trying to get to the track, got all the way up there, and it rained to race at it with.
But you got 42 miles to the gallon, though, didn't you?
And we got to see Austin Dillon hot lap.
Yeah.
That was about all we got to see.
I'll tell you one funny when that Dirt Million race when we went to up there in Mansfield. Buddy, your friend, our friend, Buddy Payne, he's always a travel agent when we do these trips or whatever. So he gets us an Airbnb in a daggum haunted house.
I have not heard this story.
I mean, we're in there. All of us are sleeping. And of course, Pops, he gets the big bed on the first floor because he's old and can't walk up the stairs.
Yep.
But, we're upstairs sleeping, and blam! The shower curtain just falls down in the bathroom. And then we're in this town, and there's not a lot of places to find food, not a lot of restaurants. We're across the street from a hospital. So me and my dad, we walk across the street and go to the hospital cafeteria to get some food.
He's probably sitting there wondering what the heck's wrong with you. Who would eat in this thing that's not admitted?
But I mean, I tell you, funny stories about racing. We, as a fan, some of the things that we would do to go watch a race are funny and amazing. I was in high school, and we decided we want to go to the Snowball Derby. Never been to the Snowball Derby. We want to go to the Snowball Derby. This fella, we had a friend, Terry Green, that drove a dirt car, and his dad, Mr. Roy Green, was a retired alcohol law enforcement agent from Alabama.
ATF, yeah.
And he only had 2 fingers on one hand. Something had happened to his other fingers. He had them 2 fingers, his bottom 2, his pinky and his ring finger. So Mr. Green is an expert at the Snowball Derby. He goes every year. He said, we got to leave at such times. We got to get there at this time or we won't get a seat. And, okay, no problem. 4.5 hour drive from home now.
Yeah, down there to
Pensacola.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave, and, my dad, we joke about Pops being tight. Well, my he ain't quite as tight as Pops, but he's tight, all right? So he ain't gonna let us drive up on Saturday and get a hotel or nothing like that. We're going to get up and drive Sunday and come back. And I had school the next day. So my dad and mom were like, well, you better promise you will get up and you will go to school. No matter what time we get home, because it's a long way, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So we get down there at like 8. I mean, we leave at, 2 o'clock in the morning, some crazy time, real early. We get down there to Pensacola about 8 o'clock in the morning. They ain't even going to let us in until about 10:30. So we're standing in the parking lot. I say, why are we here, Mr. Green? He said, well, we need some time to drink some beer and eat some sardines. So he's in there with it. And, he's out there in the parking lot with his 2 fingers wrapped around a beer can and eating sardines. So I'm like, what are we doing? Anyway, long story short, funny. I think Gary Ballou won that race when we were there.
Oh,
he wore them out. He was class of the field. Gary Ballou was in that race. Bobby Allison was in the race. It was the first asphalt race Jeff Purvis ever ran.
Oh,
we were there. Mark Martin was in that race.
There you go.
It was a field. Jody Ridley, all those guys were in it, and Gary Ballou just wore them out.
Yeah.
That's the first time I ever really remember him registering with me. I'm like, man, he was awesome. But anyway, we get home at I don't even know what time, but late. Alarm clock goes off in the morning. I'm like, oh my gosh. I get up, take a shower, get dressed. I'm headed out to go to school. I go out, I get in my car, crank my car, and I look, my dad's truck's still there, and my mom's car's still there. I said, well, man, they must have overslept. They better get up and go to work.
Yeah.
So I go back in the house, and they're in the bed. I said, hey, y'all oversleep? Oh, we ain't going to work. I said, what?
Oh, yeah.
We ain't going to work. I said, oh, so I don't have to go to school? Oh, no, you going to school.
Rule didn't apply to them and applied to you.
them. So, I mean, we've done that. We've driven umpteen different crazy hours to go to see a race. Like you drive somewhere crazy and get rained out. We've done all those things just to go watch a race, to see what we enjoy, and got a little trip planned. Going to finally make it to Eldora this fall with my dad.
Oh man,
that's going to be exciting.
Yeah,
it's something that hopefully I'll be able to do until the Lord takes me home, because I enjoy it. I don't go every weekend. I kind of pick and choose because, it can be very time consuming.
I tell you, you never know what you'll run into. I went to work a race in Hartwell, Georgia. I was working it was a 525 Steelhead Late Model Series, the Fuel Series, and Brandon Overton, Mr. Whole bunches of money in my checking account now. Well, back then he was driving he was driving Daniel Baggerly's 525 late model, and at the time I think he was in the Budweiser car, and I'd seen him in the 5, so I knew who he was. I was like, oh man, this is a big name. And I'll never forget, Hartwell Speedway was right next door to a bunch of chicken farms. I mean, we're down in Georgia, and it's June. So it's hot, and it is stinking. I mean, it's just from the back. And you didn't get used to it. You just tolerated it. But there wasn't no getting used to it. And I remember we didn't have a single pass for the lead. Brett Ham had the lead. We tried to have a restart, Delaware double file. And at Hartwell, they did this thing where the top of turns 1 and 2, before it got to the wall, they leveled off the banking. So Overton went in there on a restart, and right rear climbed up too high, and the car kind of went up and down a little bit, and it caused like a 4 or 5 car crash behind. But I just remember I'm riding home. I rode with the guys in the tech trailer, and I mean we had to, by the time we got about 10 minutes away from Hartwell, Georgia, we rolled the windows down. I mean, our clothes, everything just smelled like chicken doo-doo. But that's what you do to go race.
Yeah, man. So many things we've done, and I look back at, man, we were crazy. When my daughter was 5 or 6 years old, racing karts. I mean, we go over to Orange County kart track, which is right next to Orange County Speedway. They don't race there a lot. I don't know if they race there at all anymore, but even back then they were sporadic. It was sporadic. Every once in a while they'd have a big race, and that was about it. Well, she'd been racing on dirt at Coal Ridge, Liberty, and Leesburg, and all, doing really good. And so we took her up there. First time she'd ever been on asphalt. We're just going to do it, just whatever, just to do it. We raced there, and she ends up finishing about second or third there, and get done. We get everything put in the trailer. We're loaded up. We got ready to go home about 2 o'clock. She said, what time is it? I said, it's about 2 o'clock. She said, hey, we got time to make it to Coal Ridge if you want to go. So I looked at my dad. He said, yeah, whatever. So we jumped in the truck, and we leave Orange County and Rougemont, head to Coal Ridge. Get to Coal Ridge, they're pulling her class, getting ready to pull them in the grid. I was like, oh, boy. So snatched the thing out of the trailer. I didn't even have time to do anything but let some air out the tires.
No adjustments, no
nothing. I mean, she got the tires. We were just running on asphalt.
Yeah.
Started in the back and won the race.
Wow.
But, I mean, why would you do that? I mean, why in the world would anybody in their right mind decide I'm just going to take off 50 miles that way to go run another race after I just ran one?
Yeah.
And to go watch them, I mean, we have driven, we'd leave on Friday afternoon, go to Penton, and then Saturday go to Talladega or East Alabama. I mean, been all over Sonoa. We used to go up there, and I mean, it's just Dixie Speedway and Woodstock is a real night. I mean, that's a real good racetrack. If when they got some good cars there, it's a fun place to be. But
I heard your daughter was a Evel Knievel behind the wheel. Papa Payne has told me stories about her going about 95 down the interstate.
Well, that was
and not batting an eye.
she went with us to the National 100 one year. Me and her and Bud and Pops went, and I don't think my dad was with us that time. I think Taylor. I don't remember. I think just me and her and Dad. I mean, me and her and Buddy and Randy went, and we're coming home. We're all old, so we're tired. She says, "Well, I'll drive." I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a good day to die. It's like we're driving, and we're hauling, and I'm over there asleep. I don't care. Look, if I'm gonna crash, I don't want to be awake.
Yeah.
Just let it happen. And she drives us, gets us home, man. I'm all for it. That was a fun trip, man. That one, first time. I think it's the first time Pops ever bought me anything to eat. On that trip. You should have took that and encased it so you could have it hang on the wall. See, we took him to get a scrambled dog.
What is a scrambled dog?
That is a unique dish to Columbus, Georgia. The only place that they make them. And we went to a place down there that they make. It's basically they take a hot dog and in the bun, the weenie in the bun, and they chop it up and put it in like a tray. And then they would just smother it with chili. Not just put chili, like we put chili inside the bun in North Carolina.
Yeah, we keep it nice and
They smother it in chili. And then you get mustard, you get onion. They put pickles on. And then oyster crackers. And you eat it with a fork. I don't think Pops was a big fan of the chili dog. I think that and his IBS didn't get along too well.
I'm about to say.
But we had fun. Well, I think that time we were staying at a motel. A little prostitution activity was going on at it or whatever. But
hourly rates at the motel.
Well, we had a good time. That was one of them. It's East Alabama. It's a National 100. Man, you're gonna be there all day.
Oh, jeez. Who's the best you've ever seen? You think?
Best race car driver I've ever seen.
Yeah, just purely on talent. Where you just looked at that guy, whoever it was just like, man, that guy's good. I don't know who can touch him. I know it might be hard to just pin one.
It's hard to go cross disciplines because I have so much respect for a lot of those guys. But I'll tell you, somebody to me that has, able to kind of get in about anything and be fast is Tony Stewart. Kyle Larson's getting that way now, man. I mean, he just, whatever he gets in, he's fast. They're great drivers. It's like I said, it's so hard to compare disciplines because coming up here and catching Barry Begley's stuff that he did with a asphalt late model car. I mean, amazing. I mean, just he could do anything he wanted to do with the car. And watching people come up, it's unfortunate because I think there are a lot of people that had a lot of talent that never really got to show it on a big stage, because finances and things like that. But Begley certainly there. It's hard to, in the dirt late model world, it's hard to argue against Scott Bloomquist as much as some people hate him, some people love him. But the success is the success. There's a lot of great ones out there. I mean, I just tend to think. I try to think about that person that maybe was that one that didn't really, or somebody that, maybe had it cut short. I mean, like in the sprint world, I love to watch Jason Johnson, man.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I would say he's the best sprint car driver ever, but
he was exciting.
I think when his equipment was where it needed to be, he was fun to watch. But ton of them, man. And respect across, some of these guys in the Cup deal now. I mean, I really honestly.
You don't identify with them the way we used to.
Well, I mean, to me, I think driving that car now is more like playing a video game than driving a race car.
Yeah.
In the 80s, I've been to Talladega in the 80s when they raced at Talladega in August.
Was that back when Bill Elliott unlapped himself twice?
Twice. I was there. I was at that race. And NASCAR can say whatever they want to about restrictor plates. That's why we have restrictor plates.
Thanks, Bill Elliott.
Bill Elliott, he did that. He qualified that year at 212 and some change. He had practiced the next race at 214, almost 2, or actually 215. and the next fastest car was 212. He was 3 miles an hour quicker than anybody. And NASCAR said, we can't have this. He's stinking the show up.
There is some guy's toolbox. I don't know if I seen it on Facebook or somewhere else. Some guy's toolbox had the sticker that said "Life begins at 2:15 point blank 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 blank." Bill Elliott. And I was like, that is the greatest bumper sticker I've ever seen in racing.
I was at Talladega when that happened. We were at Talladega when Bobby Allison wrecked and tore the fence down and took him like 3 hours to fix it. Funny story about that day, they ran out of beer.
Yeah, because it was delayed.
Yeah,
it was delayed for hours.
They ran out of beer at the racetrack. Now, you talking about a bad place to run out of beer. Talladega, Alabama.
Yeah.
On race day, that was terrible. You know, 'cause I was young then. I couldn't drink, but, you know, my dad was like, ooh, he had something in his cooler. And I'm like, you could probably sell these for a ton of money, man.
I was about to say, like a shortage.
Yeah, it was crazy. And we were there when the guy stole the pace car. I mean, so
I forgot about that.
We used to make the trip to Talladega about every race once we started back going to races. And, yeah, you know, those are fun times there.
Did you ever go in the infield at Talladega?
Never been in the infield at Talladega.
I heard that's like Alabama on a different level.
Wow. I have pictures of the infield from the stands, like with a...
Look like you're looking at Mars.
There, yeah. I didn't know you could do so many creative things with school buses.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. It's amphibious.
I mean,
you sleep in it.
And, you know, I honestly, I think, you know, there's some things I could tell you, but I'd probably get my dad in a lot of trouble about Talladega and things like that. But I'll put it to you like this. In some ways, Mardi Gras doesn't have anything on Talladega, all right? It's that interesting. But I tell you, if you are a race fan, you owe it to yourself to go watch a race there, because there is nothing that I've ever been to that comes close to 40 cars coming by you at 200 miles an hour in a pack. It's amazing. And even the kids that drive these cars, and I say they're kids because most of them are kids now that drive these cars now, you know, I get frustrated with, you know, they're only there because most of them, because their daddies can write big checks, or they bring a sponsor, but it still takes something to drive that car in that pack and not, you know, wipe out the field every time you go into a corner.
Gotcha. Well, brother, I certainly appreciate it, man. This has been a ton of fun.
Well, I'm glad you came by, Tyler, and now you know where I live, so you can come by more often. We'll throw something on the grill next time.
Or I can bring the paintball gun by and we can decorate your front porch.
No, let's don't do that. That little woman in there might not appreciate that too much.
No, appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, man.